6th October, the day God will show you how, ladies and gentlemen. There are days that come and go quietly ordinary, unremarkable, passing like waves in the sea of time. And then there are days that are marked in heaven, days written in the spiritual calendar long before you ever breathed your first breath. These are the moments when the veil between the seen and unseen grows thin, when God whispers to the waiting heart, "Now, watch what I will do." October 6th is one of those days. It is not just another date on the calendar. It is a divine appointment, the day when God will show you how. Many of you have been asking, "Lord, I know you've given me the promise, but how will it happen? How will you bring it to pass?" You've believed, you've prayed, and yet the steps have felt hidden, the way forward uncertain. You've carried the vision in your heart, but haven't known how to move from revelation to manifestation. But hear me when I say the silence has not been denial, it has been divine strategy. God has been preparing your spirit for this moment. You see, every promise from God carries a process. Before the manifestation, there's always mystery. Before clarity, there's often confusion. Before divine direction, there's divine stillness. And many of you have been in that stillness feeling like nothing was moving, yet everything was shifting beneath the surface. The hand of God has been arranging, aligning, and preparing you for a release of understanding. October 6th is the day that light pierces through that uncertainty. It's the day God reveals the how. This is not a word for the impatient. It's for those who have endured the hidden season, who have kept faith alive when nothing made sense. It's for those who trusted the promise even when the process felt painful. You didn't quit. You didn't walk away. You stayed when others left. You prayed when your strength was gone. And because of that, heaven has chosen this day, October 6th, to show you what's next. On this day, revelation will flow like a river. The very thing that once puzzled you will suddenly become clear. God will bring connections, ideas, and confirmations that will make you say, "Now I understand why it had to happen that way. What was once delayed will now be displayed." The pieces will come together not by human logic, but by divine orchestration. So as you step into this prophetic day, open your heart, still your mind, expect to see what you've never seen and hear what you've never heard. Because this is the day the mystery becomes the message. This is the moment where confusion gives way to clarity. And when you look back, you'll say with confidence, "October 6th, that was the day God showed me how." Divine timing is not delayed, it's aligned. When God begins to move in your life, He does not operate according to the clocks of men. Heaven has its own rhythm, and divine timing is never late, it's perfectly aligned. What you call delay, God calls preparation. What you think is waiting, heaven calls positioning. You see, your journey was never meant to fit into human schedules. It was designed to unfold in perfect spiritual sequence. There are layers being aligned behind the curtain that your natural eyes cannot yet see. Every prayer, every tear, every sleepless night, all of it has been working toward the divine alignment that is about to reveal itself. When God promises to show you how, He does not rush. He waits until the pieces are positioned in such a way that one act of obedience, one step of faith, can cause everything to fall into place. The seeming delay is not punishment, it's protection. It's God keeping you from stepping into something before it's time. Because when you move too early, what was meant to bless you can overwhelm you. Timing is everything in the kingdom, and when you finally reach the moment of alignment, you realize that every detour, every disappointment, every unanswered prayer was part of the divine choreography. Think of a seed. It does not break through the soil the day it's planted. It rests in darkness, unseen, as roots form beneath the surface. You may not see progress, but the foundation is being established. In the same way, God often plants the vision in your spirit long before He allows it to manifest. You may feel buried, but you're actually being rooted. The longer the root takes to grow, the greater the fruit will be. And when the appointed time comes, the seed does not need to force its way out. It simply aligns with the light. That is how divine timing works. You do not chase the outcome. The outcome finds you when you are aligned. There are people, places, and moments being synchronized with your destiny. Heaven is arranging connections that your mind could never orchestrate. That's why it felt like certain things had to fall apart, because God was clearing space for what was truly meant for you. When doors closed, it wasn't rejection, it was realignment. When people walked away, it wasn't loss, it was divine protection. Everything that left your life was making room for what's about to enter. Sometimes we confuse God's silence with absence, but the truth is, He does His most precise work in the quiet. When you feel forgotten, heaven is in full motion. You just can't see it yet. The stillness is where strategy is formed. God doesn't waste a second. He works in hidden layers. He will hold back the blessing until your character is ready to sustain it, because premature promotion can destroy what preparation was meant to protect. That's why divine timing is not about delay, it's about readiness. Look back on your life and notice how certain things only made sense after they happened. You met the right person only after you learned to stand alone. You received the opportunity only after you healed from the disappointment. You understood the lesson only after the loss. You see, alignment often reveals itself in hindsight. What felt like waiting was really divine weaving. Every thread of your story, the joy, the pain, the heartbreak, the hope, all of it is being woven into a masterpiece that will make sense in its season. And when that season comes, it comes suddenly. One moment, nothing seems to move. The next, everything shifts at once. That's how divine alignment works. It appears overnight, but it's been forming for years. It's like the bamboo tree. For 5 years, it shows no visible growth. Yet in the 6th year, it suddenly shoots up over 80 feet. Was that growth sudden? No, it was silent, hidden, deep, foundational. The moment of manifestation is simply the revealing of what's been happening beneath the surface, and that's what God is doing for you. He's aligning resources, He's aligning hearts, He's aligning opportunities that will fit together in ways you could never imagine, and when it happens, you won't have to force it. You won't have to strive or beg or compete. It will flow. You'll walk into a room and realize, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. The people you meet will feel familiar, as if you've known them before, because your spirit recognizes divine alignment. It's not coincidence, it's confirmation. Understand this. Divine timing doesn't only concern what happens, but also who you've become by the time it happens. God doesn't just prepare the promise, He prepares the person. You might have been asking, when, Lord? But God's been asking, who are you becoming while you wait? Because the waiting season is where wisdom is born. It's where you learn to hear His voice beyond your emotions. It's where you learn to trust His pace more than your plan. And when your heart finally aligns with His will, the promise begins to move toward you. This is why you must stop comparing your timeline to someone else's. Their chapter 3 might be your chapter 1. Your process is customized by heaven. Some blessings take longer because they're larger in purpose. God cannot rush something that carries eternal weight. He will not give you a temporary answer to a permanent calling. The more significant your destiny, the longer the preparation. Divine timing is not slow, it's sacred, and every sacred thing takes time. You are not behind schedule. You are not forgotten. You are being synchronized with divine purpose. Every no, every delay, every detour is positioning you. The people who misunderstood you will one day witness your unveiling. The same place where you were rejected will become the place where you are celebrated, because God redeems time. He restores the years the locust has eaten. When alignment comes, restoration follows. And when God finally reveals how, you'll see that it was never about figuring it out, it was about trusting His unfolding. The how was always hidden in His when. Every waiting moment was a divine countdown. Every unanswered prayer was being stored as fuel for a greater manifestation. You weren't waiting for the blessing was waiting for you to align. So let your heart rest. Stop striving to make things happen in your own strength. What is meant for you will not miss you. God is too faithful to let you fail. He's already gone before you, preparing the path, arranging the meeting, setting the stage. When His timing collides with your obedience, the breakthrough will seem effortless. You won't have to chase, you'll simply arrive. Divine timing is not delayed, it's aligned. Every step, every pause, every turn was part of the sacred orchestration. Trust it. What's coming will not come one day late. When it shows up, you'll realize it was never delayed, it was waiting for the right alignment, the right season, and the right you. And when that moment arrives, you'll understand what God meant when he said, "Now you see why you had to wait, because this is how." The veil lifts, revelation replaces resistance. There comes a moment in every believer's journey when the invisible becomes visible, when the confusion, that clarity, your vision suddenly clears, and what once seemed impossible now feels inevitable. That moment is when the veil lifts. You see, the veil represents the barrier between what your human mind can comprehend and what your spirit already knows. For a season, God allows that veil to remain, not to punish you, but to protect the revelation until your heart is mature enough to carry it. Because revelation given too soon becomes frustration, but revelation given at the right time becomes transformation. Resistance often precedes revelation. When it feels like everything is fighting against you, your plans falling apart, your prayers echoing in silence, your strength wearing thin, that's when heaven is closest. You've been wrestling with questions, trying to make sense of what you cannot yet see. But God has been saying, "Be still, I'm working behind the curtain." The resistance you feel is not the enemy's power, it's the pressure of divine birthing. Something is forming in the unseen realm, and the veil is about to lift. When the veil lifts, light floods in. You begin to understand why certain doors had to close, why some people couldn't go with you, and why the timing felt off. What once looked like rejection now looks like redirection. God was not withholding, he was revealing in stages. The veil exists so that faith can grow stronger than sight. It forces you to walk by trust, not by logic. Because when the light finally breaks through, you will know beyond doubt that it was never your wisdom that led you here, it was grace guiding you through mystery. Have you ever noticed how in the dark your other senses become sharper? That's what happens in seasons of divine silence. When your eyes can't see what God is doing, your spirit begins to feel it. You start to discern whispers that your natural mind ignored before. This is where God refines your perception. The veil is his classroom, and the lesson is learning to recognize his voice without needing evidence. When that veil lifts, you'll realize that he was never far away, he was simply waiting for your inner hearing to awaken. Resistance, though painful, is often the very tool that sharpens revelation. Without resistance, you would not discover the strength that lies within you. You would never learn endurance, patience, or discernment. Every battle, every delay, every no has been the sandpaper smoothing your spirit for clarity. The enemy thought he was resisting your progress, but he was actually revealing your power. The more resistance you faced, the more precise your revelation will be. Because revelation comes to those who endure the dark without giving up on the light. When the veil lifts, God will not only show you what to do, he will also show you why it had to happen the way it did. You'll see divine fingerprints on every closed door, every unanswered prayer, every painful detour. You'll look back at what once broke you and realize it was building you. That loss that felt unbearable was pruning you for expansion. That silence that felt endless was preparing you for divine speech. God never wastes suffering, he hides instruction inside it. The lifting of the veil is not always a dramatic event. Sometimes it happens in a quiet moment. A scripture suddenly comes alive, a thought flashes with clarity, or peace floods your spirit where anxiety once lived. You'll feel it more than you'll see it. It's that deep knowing that something has shifted, that you finally understand what your heart has been trying to tell you all along. Revelation does not shout, it whispers. And when you're tuned to the right frequency, even the faintest whisper becomes thunder in your soul. This is why stillness is so powerful. When you stop striving, the veil begins to thin. God speaks in silence because silence silences distractions. You've been seeking external answers, but revelation is an inward experience. It's not about what's happening around you, it's about what's awakening within you. The veil is lifted not by your effort, but by your surrender. The moment you stop fighting to figure it out and start trusting that it's already being revealed, clarity begins to emerge. The truth is, the veil was never between you and God, it was between you and your awareness of him. God has been present all along. The resistance was not meant to block you, it was meant to train your vision. Just like an artist steps back from their canvas to see the bigger picture, God allows you moments of distance so that when revelation comes, you can appreciate the masterpiece he was painting. You'll see that even the mistakes, the detours, and the delays were brushstrokes of destiny. Sometimes the lifting of the veil also means the exposure of false attachments. When God reveals truth, illusions must fall. He will show you who was for you and who was just convenient. He will remove what distracts from what develops. It may feel painful when people drift away or situations shift, but that's the cost of clarity. Revelation doesn't just show you what's ahead, it also reveals what no longer fits your future. The same light that guides you forward also exposes what's been keeping you bound. And when revelation replaces resistance, you find rest. You no longer strive for answers, you receive them. You stop chasing signs because you've become one. You begin to walk in quiet confidence, knowing that what is for you cannot miss you. The fear that once paralyzed you loses its grip because now you understand God never left, he was simply preparing your sight. What once felt like a storm becomes the very wind that lifts your wings. In that moment, peace takes the place of panic. You realize that you no longer need to see the whole plan to move forward. One glimpse of divine light is enough to guide your next step. The veil doesn't lift to show you everything at once. It lifts to remind you that you're not walking alone. You are guided, protected, and deeply loved. Every obstacle that once intimidated you now serves as evidence of your growth. You no longer fear the unknown because you've learned that revelation is always hidden inside resistance. This is the mystery of God's process. The very thing that tried to break you becomes the bridge that carries you into understanding. The darkness that blinded you becomes the womb that birthed your discernment. You stop resenting the struggle and start reverencing it, because now you know without the veil you would have never sought his face. Without resistance you would have never developed revelation. So, when the veil lifts, and it will lift, let your spirit be still enough to notice it. Don't rush the moment. Don't question the process. Let the light do its work. You'll see how the resistance was never meant to stop you. It was meant to strengthen you. You'll realize that the veil was never a wall. It was a covering until you were ready to see. And when you finally do, revelation won't just answer your questions. It will realign your entire life. God will show you the next step, not the whole map. God never reveals the entire journey at once. He reveals it one step at a time. That is the way of faith. It is not that he wants to keep you in suspense, but that he wants to keep you dependent. If he showed you everything from start to finish, you would no longer need to trust him. You would simply try to manage it on your own. But faith cannot grow where control remains, so he shows you just enough light for the next step, just enough direction for the next move, just enough confirmation to keep you walking. The rest is hidden, not because he's cruel, but because he's cultivating your confidence in his voice rather than your comfort in certainty. Every person used by God walked this same narrow road. Abraham was told to leave his homeland, but God didn't tell him where to go, only to go. Moses was called to lead the Israelites, but God didn't give him the whole plan, only the next instruction: stretch out your hand. Joshua was told to march around Jericho, not fight, not plan, just walk. One command at a time, one day at a time. Why? Because God's way of building faith is progressive revelation. You don't receive the map before the movement, you receive the direction in motion. When you walk by faith, God's instructions rarely come with explanations. He doesn't tell you why, he simply says, go. That's where obedience becomes the key, because revelation only follows movement. God can't steer a parked car. Many people are waiting for the full plan before they move, but the kingdom doesn't work that way. Heaven reveals in steps, not in summaries. When you take one obedient step, he releases the next. When you move in faith, clarity begins to follow. You'll never see the entire staircase until you take the first step. And here's the truth: God hides the full map to protect you from premature fear. If you saw the valleys you would walk through, the storms you'd endure, the betrayals you'd face, you might choose to never begin. So, in mercy, he conceals it. But at the same time, if you saw the glory that awaited you, the blessings, the breakthroughs, the divine appointments, you wouldn't believe it. You'd think it was too good to be true. So he protects your promise through progressive revelation. He doesn't give you details, he gives you direction. He doesn't give you the whole story, he gives you the next sentence. And when you trust him enough to move on that, the story unfolds. You must learn to be at peace with not knowing. That's the essence of spiritual maturity, to walk when you don't have all the answers, to step out when the path is dimly lit, to believe that if God said go, then wherever your foot lands, provision will meet you there. When the Israelites walked through the wilderness, God didn't give them a week's worth of manna, only enough for each day. Why? Because he wanted them to depend on him daily. The same principle applies to you. He gives you the next instruction so that you will come back to him tomorrow. The journey is designed to keep you in relationship, not in self-reliance. Some of you have been frustrated because you can't see the full picture. You're saying, God, what's next? What should I do about this? How will this work out? But God is whispering, you don't need to know everything, you just need to know me. The next step is not always a place, sometimes it's a posture. It's not always movement outward, sometimes it's movement inward. The next step might be forgiveness, it might be surrender, it might be letting go of something that no longer serves your calling. God shows you the next step according to your readiness, not your reasoning. Understand this. God's guidance is like a lamp unto your feet, not a floodlight illuminating the entire road. A lamp only shows a few feet ahead, enough to keep walking, but not enough to control the journey. And that's intentional, because the moment you think you can see it all, pride replaces dependence. You start leaning on your understanding instead of leaning on his word. So God, in his mercy, gives you light in measures. Just enough to trust, but not enough to boast. This is also why comparison can be so dangerous. You may look at someone else's journey and think, they seem to know exactly where they're going, why don't I? But you don't know how long they've been walking by faith before they reached that level of clarity. Every person's map unfolds at a different pace. God doesn't lead everyone the same way. He reveals according to assignment, according to capacity, according to calling. What you call delay may actually be divine pacing, God keeping you aligned with your season so that what's ahead will be ready when you arrive. Sometimes the next step God shows you won't make logical sense. It might look small, insignificant, or even foolish, but that's how he tests your obedience. Remember, the Red Sea didn't part until Moses lifted his staff. The walls of Jericho didn't fall until they marched and shouted. The miracle is often hidden behind the simple instruction. It's the step that doesn't make sense that activates the breakthrough that does. The next step might not look supernatural, but it will unlock the supernatural. And here's what's beautiful. The moment you take that step, grace meets you there. Doors you couldn't open start swinging wide. People begin to appear who carry what you need. Resources start aligning without your effort. Why? Because you obeyed the voice, not the logic. You trusted the whisper, not the crowd. God always honors movement birthed in faith. The path becomes clear as you walk it, but don't confuse a quiet season with lack of direction. Sometimes God gives no new instruction because the last instruction hasn't been completed. He's not silent, he's waiting for your obedience. He won't reveal the next until you honor the now. Many people ask for clarity, but clarity comes through action. If God told you to write, write. If he told you to pray, pray. If he told you to rest, rest. Every act of obedience sharpens your spiritual hearing. Every completed instruction invites new revelation. And when you walk step by step, you start to develop a rhythm with God. You stop rushing. You stop panicking. You begin to move in sync with his spirit. That's when you realize that the goal was never the destination, it was the relationship. The map was never meant to be seen. It was meant to be walked with him. God doesn't just want to lead you to a promise. He wants to lead you into partnership. That's why he keeps the map hidden and the next step illuminated. Because if you knew everything, you'd forget to walk beside him. So when he shows you the next step, don't ask for the next 10. Walk in the light you have. Trust that he will meet you where faith moves. The map will unfold as you move forward. Every act of obedience is a doorway. Every small yes builds a bridge toward your destiny. And one day, when you look back, you'll see that every uncertain step formed the perfect path, not because you knew where you were going, but because you followed the one who did. The power of stillness, you'll hear God clearly. There is a sound that can only be heard in silence. A whisper that only becomes clear when everything else goes quiet. In a world full of noise, distraction, and endless movement, the rarest and most powerful posture you can take is stillness. God's voice is not hidden, it's simply drowned out by everything else demanding your attention. Stillness is not inactivity, it is spiritual awareness. It's where your heart stops striving to make things happen and starts receiving divine direction. You don't find God in the chaos, you find him in the calm. Many people miss God's voice because they're too busy trying to control outcomes. They rush to fix, to plan, to move, to make sense of things that can only be revealed in quiet surrender. But God speaks in frequencies that anxiety cannot hear. His guidance flows through peace, not panic. The more restless your soul becomes, the harder it is to discern him. But when you slow down, when you breathe and let go, when you stop demanding answers and simply rest, something sacred happens, clarity begins to rise. Stillness is not just about silence, it's about surrender. It's the moment when you stop wrestling with your will and align with his. In that sacred pause, your spiritual senses awaken. You begin to notice divine nudges you once ignored. You start hearing the difference between your thoughts and his voice. Stillness doesn't mean the absence of sound, it means the absence of struggle. It is the state where your spirit becomes sensitive enough to pick up divine direction without interference. Remember Elijah on the mountain? He looked for God in the wind, in the earthquake, and in the fire, but God wasn't in any of them. Then came a still small voice. That is how God speaks, not through noise, but through knowing. The world trains you to react, but the Spirit trains you to wait. When you practice stillness, you position yourself for divine whispers, and the whisper is powerful because it requires intimacy to hear it. You cannot hear God from a distance. You must come close. When you finally get quiet, you realize how loud your fears have been. Most of the noise that blocks revelation doesn't come from the outside, it comes from within. The endless replay of regrets, the noise of overthinking, the pressure to perform, the fear of missing out. These inner storms create static in the spirit, making it hard to recognize God's voice. Stillness is how you silence the storm. You don't have to make it stop, you just have to rise above it. Like Jesus sleeping in the boat during the storm, you learn that peace is not the absence of chaos, but mastery over it. In stillness, you begin to understand that not every thought deserves your attention. Not every feeling requires a reaction. Some things resolve themselves when you refuse to fight them. You start realizing that answers don't always come through effort. Sometimes they come through awareness. The voice of God doesn't compete. It waits for your permission to be heard. It's not about doing more. It's about being more aware. When you sit in stillness, you start recognizing that divine direction was always there. You were just too loud to notice it. There are blessings that can only be birthed in stillness. When you rest your mind, heaven can move. While you're busy trying to make things happen, God is waiting for you to let him. You don't have to chase alignment. You just have to quiet down enough to receive it. The kingdom operates from rest, not restlessness. That's why the Bible says, "Be still and know that I am God." That verse isn't a suggestion, it's an instruction. Stillness leads to knowing. Knowing leads to peace. Peace leads to direction. You can't hear clearly when your soul is spinning in anxiety. Stillness is how you regain focus. It's the pause that resets your spiritual hearing. When your mind stops rehearsing every possible outcome, your heart becomes open to divine instruction. That's why some of the greatest breakthroughs don't happen while you're striving, they happen while you're resting. The idea that changes everything comes while you're calm. The answer you've been searching for often arrives when you finally stop searching. Stillness also protects you from deception. When you're desperate for direction, you can mistake noise for revelation. You can confuse emotion with confirmation, but stillness separates the two. It allows truth to rise to the surface naturally, without force. You start to discern when something feels right in your spirit, even if it doesn't make sense in your mind. That's the power of divine intuition, the Spirit bearing witness with your spirit that this is the way, walk in it. God will often slow you down when He's preparing to speed you up. The pause is not punishment, it's preparation. The quiet seasons are where strategies are downloaded. In stillness, heaven gives you the blueprint for what's next. While others are running in circles, you'll be receiving divine coordinates. You'll know what to do, when to move, and how to move, not by logic, but by revelation. The world calls it intuition. Faith calls it the voice of God. When you learn to dwell in stillness, you stop chasing signs. You become so in tune with God that even the smallest nudge becomes enough. You'll feel it in your spirit when something is off, and you'll know when to wait, when to act, when to let go. You won't need to force answers, they'll come naturally. Stillness gives birth to discernment, and discernment is the currency of divine direction. Some of you have been asking, why can't I hear God? But He's been speaking, you just haven't been still. You've been praying with your mouth, but not listening with your heart. You've been talking to God, but not sitting with Him. The moment you learn to rest, to be silent, to release control, that's when His voice becomes undeniable. It might come as peace about a decision, as a verse that stands out, or as an inner assurance that settles your fear. However it comes, you'll know because His voice carries stillness within it. Stillness doesn't mean passivity. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means moving in rhythm with God's timing. It's the ability to act from peace instead of pressure. When you operate from stillness, your steps carry power. You no longer make impulsive choices. You no longer react to chaos. You respond from clarity. You stop begging for doors to open and start discerning which ones were never meant for you. Stillness makes you sensitive to alignment. You feel when it's time to move and when it's time to wait. And that's where you start to live differently. You begin to see that your strength is not in doing more, but in discerning more, that you don't need to push, you just need to perceive, that hearing from God is not about asking louder, but about listening deeper. When you find that place of inner quiet, your entire life shifts. You start walking with divine rhythm, unbothered by delays, unshaken by uncertainty, and unafraid of waiting because you've discovered that in stillness, God speaks the clearest. Your how was hidden in your heart all along. Every divine vision you carry already includes the method for its manifestation. God never gives you a desire without also planting within you the blueprint for how it will come to pass. The how isn't something you find outside of yourself, it's something that unfolds from within. The challenge is that most people keep searching externally for answers that were coded into their spirit before they were born. You've been equipped. Every skill, every instinct, every idea, every nudge you feel, it's all part of the hidden map leading you to the fulfillment of what God placed in your heart. When you receive a divine idea, it doesn't come with a manual, because you are the manual. The details are revealed as you move in faith. God doesn't show you the whole path because He wants you to trust the step in front of you. The how isn't something to be discovered, it's something to be revealed through obedience. The moment you start acting on what you know, the next instruction appears. That's how heaven operates. Revelation follows movement, not hesitation. The step you're afraid to take often contains the direction you've been asking for. Every dream begins as a seed, and within that seed is the pattern of its fulfillment. The same way an oak tree already exists within an acorn, the full expression of your destiny already exists within your heart. You don't have to beg for the process, you only have to trust the unfolding. Your spirit knows what your mind hasn't yet grasped. You're not trying to create your purpose, you're trying to remember it. Every time you feel drawn to something, a passion, a vision, a desire, it's your spirit recognizing its own reflection. The how is not something foreign to you, it's your soul speaking in its native language. The reason so many lose momentum is that they're waiting for all the answers before moving. But the kingdom doesn't operate on explanations, it operates on revelation. Faith doesn't need to see the full staircase, it just needs to take the next step. As you move, the hidden wisdom inside you awakens. You start recalling ideas, connections, strategies, and gifts you didn't even know you had. God hides your how inside obedience. He conceals it within the process so that only those who trust Him enough to walk forward can uncover it. The how is divine intelligence expressing itself through your intuition. It's the inner guidance that whispers, do this now, or wait here. It's the peace that confirms your direction and the unease that warns you when you're out of alignment. When you learn to listen to that inner knowing, you no longer chase answers, you become the answer. You stop asking, how will it happen, and start realizing it's happening through me. God doesn't drop external instructions, he activates internal revelation. The spirit within you becomes your compass, your map, your GPS. What you call uncertainty, heaven calls unfolding. The how doesn't come in a flash of light, it comes in small, consistent steps of clarity. Every time you act in faith, you receive more light for the journey. The vision was never about figuring it out, it was about trusting it out. You can't overthink your way into destiny, you must move your way into it. The heart knows before the head understands. That's why your intuition always feels a few steps ahead of logic. The spirit plants a knowing long before your mind can explain it. God will often give you a dream that looks impossible so that you'll depend entirely on his process, not your plan. The how is hidden to humble you, to keep you dependent on divine timing rather than human calculation. If you knew every step in advance, you'd stop seeking his guidance, so he reveals it piece by piece, not to confuse you, but to mature your trust. The unfolding becomes your classroom. You learn to hear, to wait, to obey, to adjust, and through that process you discover that you were never without direction, just without awareness. The answer has always been inside of you, but it's revealed through alignment. When your heart aligns with divine will, the ideas begin to flow naturally. You start attracting the right people, opportunities, and moments that fit your purpose perfectly. You realize that the how doesn't come through force, but through flow. What was once a mystery begins to feel effortless, not because it got easier, but because you finally got in sync with your design. When you operate from your true self, the self God designed, not the one fear created, the how unfolds organically. Your gifts begin to make room for you, your ideas start to multiply, your actions start to bear fruit because they're aligned with your spiritual DNA. You stop chasing strategies that don't fit your calling. You stop comparing your journey to others. You recognize that your path was tailor-made, your timing, your lessons, your rhythm, all specific to your soul's assignment. Sometimes the how hides behind hardship. It takes struggle to reveal strength. It takes waiting to develop wisdom. God often disguises direction inside difficulty. You think you're being delayed, but you're actually being developed. The closed doors, the detours, the disappointments, all of them are refining the version of you that can handle the promise. The how isn't just about what you do, it's about who you become while doing it. You're not just walking toward destiny, destiny is being built within you. There's a reason God gives you glimpses of the promise, but not the full process. He's protecting you from premature exposure. If he showed you every detail, you'd either rush ahead or run away. The process prepares you to carry what you're praying for. The how is revealed as your character evolves. Every time you let go of fear, doubt, or control, more clarity emerges. It's not that God was silent, it's that your fear was too loud. When you quiet the noise, you'll find that the next step was already in your heart. The how isn't found in waiting for confirmation, it's in walking by conviction. The moment you take inspired action, the universe rearranges itself around your faith. You don't need to know every outcome, you just need to trust the inner instruction. The idea you can't stop thinking about, the project you can't ignore, the dream that won't leave you alone, that's God's hint. That's the encoded direction pointing you toward fulfillment. Your heart knows the way, your faith simply needs to follow. Everything you need to fulfill your calling is already within you, the ideas, the wisdom, the timing, the strategy. God didn't send you into this life empty-handed. He equipped you fully before you entered the battlefield. The world tries to make you believe you're behind, but heaven knows you're right on schedule. Your how isn't missing, it's maturing. It's awakening through every experience, every prayer, every test. You're learning to recognize that divine timing and divine method are never separate. When the heart is ready, the how becomes clear. When you stop searching for the how and start trusting the who, the one who planted the vision life begins to unfold with divine precision. Every piece starts fitting together. Every delay starts making sense. Every moment becomes part of the masterpiece. You realize that nothing was wasted because every lesson was leading you back to yourself, to the hidden how that was waiting in your heart all along.